So the Chosen have given us two new disciples. They have introduced us to Philip and Nathaniel. So season 2, episode 2, let's talk about it right now. So we're introduced to two new disciples in this episode. I saw you. We've got Philip and we've got Nathaniel. And we mostly see Nathaniel's story throughout this whole episode. This is what this episode is based on. It was definitely an intriguing and a bit of an emotional storyline. I love the bit right at the end of the episode where Jesus says to him, "I saw you sitting under that fig tree," and Nathaniel is taken aback by all of that. Obviously, we see Nathaniel and Philip's relationship as well. I can't be too sure in the New Testament whether Philip and Nathaniel were that close, but it must be true that they were that close. That's why Philip went to visit Nathaniel. And just Nathaniel's story regarding him being an architect and being fired from his job and being disdained from his job. His name is pretty much tarnished being an architect, so he now feels like an outsider, and we see that storyline unfold relatively quickly. For me, I felt a bit unsure whether they should have unfolded it that quickly. I think throughout the whole of season 1 we were introduced to most of the disciples over quite a long period of time by each episode. Nothing happened too quickly per episode. As well, this episode we're kind of introduced to Nathaniel. We see his high and then we see his low as a low when he's sitting under the fig tree and he's crying out to God saying, "Do not turn your face away from me," and he's burning his drawings, his architectural drawings of what he wants to build, a place to worship God. He has a devotion and he wants to worship God through his gifting, for the skills that God has given him, and he just feels this sort of disappointment surrounding him and feeling like he knew what God's plan was for his life, he knew what God had given him to do, and then for him to have to be pushed out from that because of the building collapsing on other people and killing a couple of people. I believe it wasn't too sure whether people were killed in that, but and people were definitely injured, but his name being tarnished through that and just facing that disappointment and his downfall in that and facing that downward cycle, and Jesus saving him from that at the very end, bringing him into the cycle of disciples, his following. I did feel that this episode in general, I don't feel it was as good as the first episode per se. I think obviously under the first episode there was a lot of hype from my end about it, so I was really excited to see it and I really wanted to see what was going to happen, and it kind of hit every nail on its head. And there was a lot of emotional storylines, and it was just to see all the disciples come back again and to see Jonathan Rumi as Jesus again. So in episode 1, that's what I really loved, just to see them come back again and just all those storylines unfolding. But just this episode, it felt like there was something missing. I'm not quite sure what that was. It felt a bit abrupt, a bit too quick, and it was a bit all over the place. I felt the episode was like we had the Nathaniel storyline, and that happened really quickly, and then we had Philip introduced, and I think he's an awesome character. The guy who plays him, he plays him really, really well. This sort of spontaneous and quite bold character. You could tell that he's experienced. You could tell that he was with John the Baptist. He has a certain confidence about him. There's certain boldness about him. You could tell he's done this and been here before, and he's just now following Jesus, and he's not really pushed down by the disciples. He kind of not overpowers them. He just has a certain charisma and this confidence about him, and that it was really intriguing to see actually how he values Matthew so much and how he sees Matthew as an outsider, and he actually feels how Matthew is feeling because he's been there before and he knows what it is to be on the outside, the circle that Matthew drew. And I think it was such a perfect picture and really revealed Matthew's character a lot and how he felt because of who he is, his attention to detail, and he doesn't have the social mindset that others do. He's a bit socially inept in that way. It was really nice to see that Philip valued Matthew that much, and he was actually purposefully and intentionally wanting to connect with Matthew on a deeper level and just encouraging Matthew and really helping Matthew get a bit more boldness, a bit more confidence for Matthew to then stand up to Peter, Simon Peter, in a way, because Simon Peter, being who he is, he's quite a sort of an abrupt person. He'll just tell it how it is, very honest, and he got a bit fed up with how things were being a bit spontaneous, and Simon Peter loved that, loved structure, and it was a good foreshadowing of Simon Peter's character that Jesus when Jesus and him were having that conversation, we got to see the foreshadowing that Jesus was saying that I will need that gifting, that structural planning, and that we need that sort of leadership style later, but not at the moment, because like Jesus said, he was still there at the time. And it was, again, another foreshadowing. Jesus says, but when I leave, that will be something that we need, and not foreshadowing the build-up of the church, and Simon Peter being known as the foundation of the church, bar Jesus, but Simon Peter being the head of the church. It was just there was a lot of foreshadowing in this whole episode, really, with the foreshadowing of Simon Peter with the church, and foreshadowing of Jesus' death. Him keep saying that he won't be around that much longer, and that he had to go off for a couple of days to think about and pray about to the Father how he was going to approach the disciples regarding his death, and regarding that he wouldn't be around too much longer, and how he was going to leave the disciples on their own for quite some time. So there was these little glimpses of foreshadowing going on, and that was really good writing, really good storytelling there. So that was really, really interesting. But I do love how the disciples are now playing off one another. We can kind of really see each character coming out in their own way, and it was just really interesting how we see the heart of Jesus, his heart for each person as individuals, that he's really showing that he values each disciple as an individual. Like, he knows that they're a group of disciples, but they each bring something different to the table, so to speak. Matthew he's really good with numbers, he's really articulate, he's very precise with detail. Simon Peter being a leader, and having that leader gifting, and wanting structure and wanting precision and those sorts of things, and others bringing their own gifting to the table as well. It's just really interesting to see now we're really digging deep into each character, and just we as an audience now we get to see where who we connect with more. So for me personally, I wouldn't connect with myself with one character per se. I think for me, and I know a lot of other people do, that there are seasons of life where I would connect with different characters in different sort of ways. So obviously I may have gone through a time in my life where I would have connected with someone like Nathaniel a little bit more, facing disappointment, thinking that I knew what God's plan was for my life, and for that to just change in a minute. Or maybe at other seasons of my life I would feel like Matthew, where Matthew feels like an outsider most of the time, and I've been through seasons in my life where I felt like an outsider, and there are still seasons in my life where I do feel like an outsider. So yeah, there are so many characters where I really connect with them in different ways at different moments of my life, and I think a lot of people feel the same. Just wondering what you may think. Who do you connect with at the moment? I would love to know in the comments below. But yeah, this episode in general was a really good episode, but what I do love is there's a lot of foreshadowing going on, and we can just see the heart of Jesus really coming out, the way that Jonathan Rumi plays him, and again, this sort of charisma and humour that he brings to the role. He brings different elements to reveal Jesus' personality. That yes, he is God, but he is human, and we're getting to see his humanness really coming out, really being revealed. That he does have all different emotions. He does have anger, he does have sadness, and he does have confusion. Like, he doesn't have it all together per se in his human mind. He's still wrestling with these things. He's still wrestling with how to speak to the disciples about, not being here anymore, and coming up to the crucifixion, which I think is not until like season 6. This episode, I think, just really touches on the fact that Jesus does see us even in our darkest times. That we feel like sometimes when things go wrong, especially with Nathaniel, which a lot of people probably would connect with, is that things just can go wrong very quickly. We've seen through the whole year of COVID that things can go wrong drastically quickly, and plans change. People would have planned their whole year of probably 2020 and even probably earlier 2021, and things just not going in the way that we planned, and we're just crying out to God saying, why is this happening? Why is there so much suffering? Why me? And actually we can connect with Nathaniel on that sort of level, saying, why is this happening? Don't you see what's happened to me, God? Don't turn your face away from me. And it just shows that we can cry out to him, and that Jesus does come down to our level. He does say, I can see you, I can see what you're going through, and I know the pain that you're going through. And Jesus goes through that pain, as we will get to see in season 6. He will go through that pain, dying on the cross. And obviously, reading the New Testament, you can see the excruciating pain that he will go through, and you can kind of see that coming out now in this whole episode, that how he's wrestling with these emotions already deep in his mind, because he knows what's coming, and how he's being content with that, but also wrestling emotionally with that. And it's just really interesting to see. It was just interesting as well to see both the women, I think it was Mary and Martha, just getting along really, really well, and just starting to get to see more of their characters and more of their relationship, and actually how Jesus is for women as well, because they're starting to explore their own gifting, what they can bring to the following, the table, so to speak. And Thomas, the doubting Thomas, doubting whether they should even be doing that, thinking, oh, we have the answers, women can come to us. And it's interesting to see that this heart that Jesus has for women as well, that they actually get to explore their gifting, that they shouldn't be pushed down by anyone or anything, that they get to explore the gifting that God has given and the value that God places on people. That God values every single person as individuals, that everyone is on an equal playing field. And so we get to see this equality throughout the whole episode, that even though people like Thomas or some people are uncomfortable with the fact that Jesus chooses specific people to do specific things, and they think they have in their mind what people should be doing, what people shan't be doing. But Jesus actually turns the tables completely. He makes the weak strong, and he makes the strong weak. So he just really turns the tables, and you can see this coming out, revealing all the time, that Jesus does turn the tables on people's own ideas and perceptions on life in general, and on people, and how we value people, and how we treat people, and how he rebukes Simon Peter for how he's treating Matthew, or how he's just his own perspective on people. It's just interesting how Jesus is slowly transforming and just changing their disciples' perspectives, and even changing our perspective as we start to relate to these characters. And as he's confronting the disciples, at the same time Jesus is confronting us. He's confronting our own perceptions and perspectives on certain things, on how we see the world, on how we see reality, or our own world view. But yeah, I really liked episode 2. I didn't think it was as strong as the first episode, and I know a lot of people agree with that, but I know that obviously we've got episode 3 that was played back to back, so I will do another video on episode 3, but I would love to know your thoughts on episode 2. Do you relate to any of these characters? If so, tell me down below in the comments. I'd love to know your thoughts. May God bless you during this time. May He help you engage with the culture and connect with Jesus.